How's it going, guys? Today I would like to give you my thoughts on Super Planet's newest game, Airship Nights, after 2 weeks of playing it. In a nutshell, this game is a completely idle gacha game. This means that the game practically plays itself, and all you have to do is leave the game running. Now if you're like me, you don't really look towards gacha games or idle games for a good story, and Airship Nights is no exception. There's a story here that's told with cute little cutscenes, with plenty of dialogue and voice acting that's not half bad. But that's as far as I cared for it. For the most part, I skipped a lot of the cutscenes later on. The premise is pretty simple. Your main character is a complete nobody who aspires to one day be an airship knight. You start out with a small ship and crew, and through your adventures you slowly gain more teammates and prestige along the way. Now that you guys get the gist of the story, let's talk about the gameplay and what is there really to do in an idle game. The premise of the gameplay is simple. With your team, the goal is to get through as many stages as possible, and when you finally get stuck, there's a mechanic that acts similar to New Game Plus in RPGs, where you restart back to level 1, but you retain a multitude of stats and items. This should make the following run somewhat easier, and by the time you get back to where you were stuck, your units would be of higher power. I know some people like this kind of mechanic, but it's honestly not for me as I find it rather repetitive, and I'll talk more about this later on how this return system to me feels very unrewarding. Going back to the question I asked earlier, what is there to do in this game and what's the main goal? As you might have guessed, games such as this are an endless grind which I found to already be stale 1 week into the game. And that's not because of the lack of content, but because of the nature of the game. As you can see here, my team is just mowing down through each enemy until I inevitably get stuck. With each enemy slain, I gain small amounts of resources which I use to upgrade my team's stats. Eventually, upgrades get too expensive, so I either have to wait for a long time or do what's called a return, and return back to stage 1. By returning back to stage 1, I still retain my permanent stats, along with specific upgrade materials. These materials are used to upgrade permanent things such as your airship facilities or character levels. Now you'll have to grind all the way back to where you were, which can take a long time. You'll also have to manually upgrade a lot of stats again, which I find extremely repetitive, albeit it does get slightly faster in the mid-game once you start to really kill things fast and make faster money. I told you guys this was very tedious and repetitive, more so than other gacha game mechanics, but I will also note a few more things I'm disappointed with. The first thing is this game's very low offline reward system. As of the making of this video, in order to maximize your farming, you have to leave your game on. You still get resources when you shut off the game and come back to it, but the amount is nearly negligible and basically a slap in your face. To me, if an idle game essentially needs itself to be on for 8+ hours a day, then that's not a game I want to invest in, nor will it do any favors for any of my mobile devices or PC. Next, I'll talk about a few more features that I believe can be improved and end the video with some aspects that I liked about the game. First off, the polling system is less than ideal, and if you want to become competitive in this game, you'll need many duplicates of each character, but the same can be said for most other gacha games, so I'm not too surprised here. Speaking of competition, the PvP in this game so far has been somewhat unbalanced, in which teams with 1 or 2 characters extremely overleveled can take on a full team of 6. However, with recent updates, there's been some balance improvements with this. On the bright side, PvP is not a major part of this game, so from that perspective, you could say this game is free-to-play friendly. To add on to what I said earlier about the game's disappointing return system and offline rewards, a lot of the menus on the screen will take you to another screen, which will pause your farming, further slowing things down. The main message I want to get across all of this is that the game is extremely tedious, repetitive, and cumbersome, more than other idle gacha games I've played in the past. If this is your only mobile game, then I could see someone really playing the hell out of this. But if you're trying to balance this with other games you're playing, then there are better, more engaging games out there that don't require too much attentiveness as Airship Nights. I feel like I've bashed this game enough, so let's talk about a few good things I liked. The first thing that stood out was that the game doesn't force you to watch any ads. There are rewards provided should you want to watch any ads, but the rewards aren't too amazing where you would be at a disadvantage if you didn't watch any ads ever. The other important thing to note is that this game is fairly free-to-play friendly. You'll get a generous amount of gems in the beginning, and throughout the mid-game as you complete achievements and progress in the story. My prediction is that these will slowly become harder to amass as you get further into the story, and so you're completing fewer big achievements than initially. By this time though, you'll already have a full team of high tier characters. With all that's been said, I'd like to summarize everything and give you my final thoughts on the game after 2 weeks of playing it. At its core, Airship Nights is an idle farming game that involves restarting many times, which to me felt very repetitive. Repetition is not a bad thing if what you're playing is enjoyable. When you're repeating it in Airship Nights, it's literally just upgrading everything again with minimal improvements each time. It truly feels like an endless grind with no destination in sight and with an unrewarding journey along the way. Yes, you'll still get some tiny hits of dopamine here and there, seeing your team's improvements and cute flashing animations, but these become dull rather quickly. I like the simplicity of the game along with its simple UI, generic character designs, simple crafting and upgrade systems, but no amount of these features and add-ons can make up for the core gameplay for me. Playing this game, I've learned that I don't really like these restart kind of games. Despite being an idle game, you can't really let it sit all day without touching it because you need to be upgrading everything again, whereas with other gacha games like Swordmaster Story, I can just set up my farming team and leave it on without ever adjusting anything. If I'm going to leave the game running on for hours on end, I want it to be truly idle and not touch a thing. I'm sure there's an audience out there where this game makes sense for them, but for me, it's going to be a no. That concludes my thoughts on Airship Nights, and I hope this video helped those of you who are curious about trying the game out. If you're like me, then I would suggest saving yourself the time and skipping this game. If you're still intrigued, then give the game a try yourself for a few days and see if it's a game you can stick with long term. If any developers are watching this video, I'm sure my opinions are shared amongst the community and hope you consider all the critiques shared to improve your game and turn it into something successful long term. Thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.